Dust rose in the air as the human transport ship landed on the alien planet of Velkara. The world was quiet at first, too quiet for a planet that had just signed a peace treaty with Earth. Private Lorne stepped out of the shuttle, boots hitting the dry ground. He had only been assigned here for 1 week, a diplomatic escort mission, nothing more. Or so he was told. The sky was tinted violet, and 2 moons hovered above like watchful eyes. His armor was light, his weapons sealed. There wasn't supposed to be danger. But Lorne had been a soldier too long to believe anything was ever safe. He scanned the horizon and noticed the broken towers in the distance, ancient alien structures. The people of Velkara were warriors once, before they embraced peace. Now they were silent architects, rebuilding and healing. At least that was the story the diplomats told. Lorne walked toward the village where his escort detail would begin. But before he reached it, he heard a strange sound behind him. A humming, low and sharp, like a blade slicing the wind. He turned, and a figure dropped from a nearby ridge. She was tall, skin like polished sapphire, hair woven in long silver braids. Her armor was older than Lorne's, worn but strong. She didn't draw her weapon, but her eyes held warning. She didn't look like a peaceful citizen. She looked like a warrior ready to test him. "You walk too openly," she said in clear galactic common. "Are all humans this loud?" "I was told this region was safe," Lorne replied, steady but alert. "No place is safe anymore," she said, and gestured toward the hills. "They've returned. The Draxan, raiders, slavers, killers. They don't care about treaties. They already burned 2 villages north of here. One of them was mine." Lorne's stomach tightened. He hadn't been briefed about any new threats. This wasn't what he signed up for. But duty burned in his chest. He couldn't walk away from this. Not with someone like her looking him in the eye. She turned away, but then paused. "If you want to survive, follow me. If you want to hide, go back to your shuttle." He followed her without another word. Her name was Tashara, daughter of General Kareth, once a feared name in the Great Galactic War. She didn't say much, but the way she moved through the forest and across stone paths told Lorne everything. She had fought before. She had lost before. And now she was ready to fight again. They reached her camp just as the sun dipped behind the Twin Peaks. It wasn't much, just a hut made of dried leaves, some weapons hanging on the wall, and a fire pit. But it felt alive. It felt like home. She handed him a dried fruit and sat across from him. Her blade lay across her lap. It shimmered with markings that Lorne didn't recognize. "This was my father's sword," she said quietly. "He died defending this planet. I swore I'd never raise it again. But now the Draxan return. The humans will not believe us. So I must act first." Lorne looked at the sword. It didn't just look like a weapon. It looked like a symbol, a call, a promise. Something greater than just steel. "Then let's fight together," he said finally. Tashara studied him for a moment. Her fingers ran along the edge of the blade. Then she stood and held it out toward him, eyes glowing with a strange fire. "This sword belonged to my father. Human, now it's yours," she said with a voice low but steady. Lorne didn't speak. He just took the sword in his hands and felt its weight settle into his bones. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for sure. This mission had changed. And now, it was personal. The sword felt cold in Lorne's hand at first, heavier than he expected. It wasn't just metal. It carried history, pain, and blood. Tashara watched him as if weighing his soul, not just his grip. "You must learn its balance," she said. "It's not just a weapon. It's a bond." They moved outside into the twilight. The campfire behind them flickered, casting long shadows. Tashara showed him how to hold the sword, how to shift his stance, how to let the blade move with him instead of against him. Lorne had training, but nothing like this. Earth combat drills were rigid, full of commands and numbers. This was different. Fluid. Alive. The sword sang in the air each time he swung. And Tashara corrected him without a word, only with her eyes or a small nudge. "You're learning fast," she said after an hour. "Faster than I expected. But the sword must trust you too. It only serves the worthy." He didn't know what that meant, but he nodded. They rested by the fire as the first stars appeared in the violet sky. Lorne cleaned the blade and glanced at Tashara. Her armor was scratched, her body scarred, but her spirit was solid like stone. She had lost much but still stood tall. "Why did you give it to me?" he asked. She looked into the flames before speaking. "I watched my father fall. I watched my people burn. I've tried to warn others, but they call me a daughter of war. Not peace, but you didn't run when I told you the truth. You followed. That means more than orders." A sharp sound snapped them to attention. It came from the trees, quick steps, breaking twigs, low growls. Tashara stood first, her body already in battle posture. Lorne rose and gripped the sword. From the shadows, dark shapes moved. Not animals, not Valkyrans. The Draxen had found them. 5 tall figures with armor made from bone and scrap metal stepped into view. Their faces were hidden behind jagged masks. Each held a jagged spear or cruel-looking blade. Tashara whispered one word: "Raiders." There was no time for planning. The first attacker lunged. Lorne met him with a sideways block. The impact sent shivers up his arm. He twisted and struck back, barely grazing the enemy's side. Tashara moved beside him like fire, spinning low and kicking her target's knee. Steel clashed. Grunts echoed through the trees. Lorne fought with everything he had. The sword felt like it was guiding him, adjusting to his movements, making him faster. One by one, the Draxen fell or fled into the forest. When the last one disappeared into the dark, Lorne stood panting, arms sore and chest heaving. Blood dripped from a cut near his ear. Tashara wiped her blade clean and turned to him. "You did not break," she said. "That is good. But this was only a scout group. The main force will come soon." Lorne nodded and sat on a nearby rock. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the weight of what was coming. "We need to warn the humans," he said. "They'll listen now. They have to." Tashara didn't answer right away. She looked at the sky again. The stars seemed brighter now, but colder too. "They won't believe me." "But they might believe you," she said. Lorne stood and faced her. The sword in his hand no longer felt foreign. It felt like part of him now. "Then let's show them together." Tashara gave a slow nod. For the first time, a small smile touched her lips. Not joy, but something older. Trust. She stepped beside him and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Tomorrow we march east. There's an old outpost there. If the Draxen attack again, we'll stop them there, or die trying." Lorne looked ahead. The forest waited, still and quiet. But the storm had already begun. He gripped the sword tighter and followed her into the night. The sun rose over Valkara's eastern ridge, spilling golden light across the forest floor. Birds scattered at the sound of footsteps. Lorne walked beside Tashara, sword strapped to his back and dust on his boots. His body ached from the fight, but his mind burned sharper than ever. They moved fast, avoiding open ground and passing through silent ruins. Tashara's pace was relentless. She spoke little. She did not need to. Lorne understood now that silence was part of her strength. After 2 hours, they reached a crumbling stone gate covered in moss and ancient markings. Beyond it lay the outpost she had spoken of, a circular compound half buried in time. Metal walls bent under creeping vines. Broken towers leaned like tired sentries. "This used to be a command point during the war," Tashara said. "It has power cells, comm systems, maybe weapons. If we can activate it, we can send a warning across systems." Lorne followed her inside. The interior smelled of rust and old battle. Burn marks stained the walls. Empty supply crates sat in corners. A single long table was cracked in half. But Tashara's eyes searched with purpose. She opened a hidden hatch in the floor and climbed down. Below, the room was dark until she hit a switch. Lights flickered to life, revealing a dusty control panel and glowing lines running through the walls. Tashara stepped to the panel and pressed several buttons. A low hum answered. Then the screen lit up. "It still works," she said. "Barely, but enough." Lauren stepped closer. "Can we contact the human fleet?" "No. This outpost was never linked to your frequencies, but we can broadcast a wide signal. If your people are listening, they'll hear it." She began typing a message while Lauren watched. Her fingers moved fast, entering coordinates and a distress call in both Velkaren and Galactic Common. Static buzzed from the speakers. Then a soft tone confirmed the message had been sent. "We wait now," she said. "Or we prepare." Outside, clouds gathered like soldiers on the march. A wind rose from the north. It carried dust, cold, and the scent of metal. Lauren stepped outside and scanned the horizon. For a moment, everything was still. Then he saw movement on the far ridge. Dark figures, dozens of them, marching in a line. The Draxen were coming again. Lauren rushed back inside. "They're here," Tashara nodded and opened a side locker. Inside were 2 rifles, a crate of plasma charges, and another sword smaller than the one she gave him. She handed Lauren a pack and motioned to the tower above. "We fight from the high ground. Delay them. Kill as many as we can. If they breach the wall, we fall back to the core." Lauren climbed the narrow stairs to the lookout point. He lay flat and set up the rifle. Tashara climbed another tower opposite him. The Draxen were closing fast now. Shadows stretched behind them. Their weapons glinted in the morning light. Lauren waited until the first wave reached the outer range. Then he fired. One fell. Another ducked. The others spread out, rushing forward. Tashara's shots came next, clean and deadly. The battle had begun. The outpost shook with explosions. Smoke rose from the fields. The Draxen roared in their strange language, returning fire with jagged bolts. Lauren ducked as a blast struck the wall beside him. Stone cracked and dust filled the air. He saw a Draxen climbing the side wall. He switched to the sword and jumped. Down to meet him, metal clashed. Lauren ducked, struck, then finished with a clean arc. Another followed. Tashara joined him at the gate, blades flashing like light. For every one they killed, 2 more took their place. The outpost groaned under the assault. The walls trembled. Then came the sound they feared most, cracking metal from the northern wall. The barrier had broken. Tashara pulled Lauren back toward the central room. "They're breaching. Seal the main door. We hold them here." He slammed the door and engaged the lock. The room grew silent except for the hum of the sword in his hand and Tashara's heavy breath. They had only minutes before the final fight. Tashara stepped close and met his eyes. "This is where warriors stand or fall. Are you ready, human?" Lauren raised the sword and nodded. "Let them come." They stood side by side as the Draxen pounded on the final door. The last line between survival and death. Asterisk, the metal door rattled violently as the Draxen pounded from the other side. Inside the control chamber, Lauren and Tashara stood shoulder to shoulder. Smoke lingered in the air, and the lights flickered above them. The final defense had begun. Tashara crouched near the wall and retrieved a set of thermal grenades. She handed 2 to Lauren. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were calm. This was not her first time facing death. It might be her last, but she welcomed it like an old rival. "They will not stop," she said. "If they breach this room, they'll take everything. The sword. The message. You. Then we don't let them in," Lauren replied. He moved behind a console, crouching low. The old control room had limited cover. but he would use what he could. His heart beat steady now. Fear had no room left in him. Only resolve remained. Door bent inward. A crack formed along the frame. The first Draxon spear pushed through, followed by snarling voices. Then the door gave way with a metallic shriek, and chaos poured in. Lorn threw his first grenade. The blast sent the front line flying backward, limbs and metal clashing mid-air. Tashara leapt forward, blades in both hands, striking with fury and precision. She danced through their ranks like a storm with purpose. Lorn followed, using the sword like an extension of his body. Each swing was guided by instinct, training, and something deeper. The sword hummed as if alive, striking down every enemy that came too close. Blood spilled across the floor. Sparks flew from broken weapons, but the Draxon kept coming. Their numbers seemed endless. Lorn fought beside Tashara, never leaving her side. Their rhythm was unspoken. One blocked, the other struck. One dodged, the other killed. The room trembled as another wave surged inside. Lorn was pushed back against the wall. A Draxon towered over him, blade raised high. Before the strike fell, Tashara crossed the room in a blur and drove her sword through its chest. "You are not allowed to die yet," she said, pulling him back to his feet. More Draxon poured in. The grenades were gone. The energy cells were nearly drained. Lorn felt fatigue creeping into his bones. His breath came in gasps. But the sword still felt strong in his hand, as if it refused to let him give up. Then, behind the enemy lines, a sudden roar cut through the chamber. The Draxon froze. A new figure stepped into the room, taller, heavier, clad in red armor with a jagged crown. The Draxon commander had arrived. Tashara's face hardened. She stepped forward and pointed her blade. "That is the one who led the slaughter of my people. He took my father's life. His name is Koran." Lorn stepped beside her. The commander raised his axe and gave a low growl. The Draxon moved aside, forming a circle. They wanted to witness what came next. A duel. Koran charged. His axe came down with force meant to shatter bone. Lorn blocked, but the impact sent him skidding across the floor. Tashara leapt in, striking low. Koran kicked her aside with brute strength. The duel turned brutal. Blades flashed, sparks flew. Koran fought like a beast, but Lorn had something more. He had the sword. And the sword remembered. With each strike, Lorn gained ground. He matched the commander's strength with precision. Tashara recovered and joined him, 2 against 1. Blades moved in harmony. The Draxon watched in silence. Finally, Lorn found the opening. A quick twist, a sudden thrust. The sword pierced Koran's chest. The commander gasped, dropped his weapon, and fell to his knees. Tashara stepped forward and ended it with a clean strike. The chamber grew quiet. The remaining Draxon lowered their weapons. Without their leader, they had no will to fight. One by one, they retreated from the outpost without another word. Lorn leaned against the wall, breath shallow. His hands trembled from exhaustion. Tashara walked to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. Her face was pale, but her eyes were alive with fire. "You fought like a Valkyren today," she said. The sword glowed softly between them, not in blood, not in anger, but in honor. The battle was over, but something deeper had changed. The outpost lay quiet now. Smoke drifted slowly from the broken ceiling. The air was thick with heat, blood, and silence. Lorn sat on the ground, leaning against the control panel, his arms covered in bruises and dried sweat. Tashara stood near him, her blade still in hand. They had survived. For now, Tashara walked to the broadcast terminal and checked the signal logs. The distress call had been sent and received. Somewhere out there, someone had heard them. But whether help would come, neither of them could say. "The signal reached a relay station," she said. But that may not be enough. We don't know how fast your people will act, or if they even believe it's real. Lorne looked up at her. Then we prepare for the worst. Just like we did today. Tashara knelt beside him and inspected a deep cut across his arm. Without a word, she tore a strip from her tunic and wrapped it tight. She moved with care, not as a warrior now, but as something gentler. You bleed like us, she said. But you fight with fire. Maybe the old ways still live in you. I fight because I have to, Lorne said. Not for glory. Not for orders. Just to protect what's left. She nodded once, then stood and paced the chamber. Her eyes scanned the wall, pausing on a faded symbol, an ancient Valkyran crest. She touched it gently, almost reverently. This place was once the heart of our command, she said. My father led from here. His voice filled these halls. Now all that's left is dust and bones. Lorne stood slowly. He picked up the sword and strapped it across his back. The weight no longer felt foreign. It belonged now. Not to a past, but to a purpose. We can't let it fall again, he said. If the Draxen come back in numbers, this outpost won't hold. We need allies. We need to move. Tashara looked out the shattered window. The land beyond stretched wide and wounded. Smoke curled from a village far in the distance. It wasn't over. Not yet. There's one who might help, she said. An old commander. He left the war, became a monk in the Stone Mountains. But he still listens when Velkara cries. Then let's go, Lorne said. They gathered supplies, rations, ammo, tools, and buried the fallen Draxen outside the wall. Even enemies, Tashara said, deserved rest. Then they set out across the valley, feet heavy but hearts burning. The journey was slow. The terrain shifted from cracked plains to jagged hills. At night, they slept in turns. Tashara told old stories of Velkara, of battles and fallen warriors. Lorne listened without speaking, feeling each tale settle into his chest. On the third morning, they reached the Stone Mountains. Jagged cliffs rose like frozen waves, carved by wind and time. At the base stood a gate made of bone-white stone, guarded by two silent figures in robes. Tashara stepped forward. The guards did not stop her. One bowed his head and moved aside. They entered a cavern lit by glowing crystals embedded in the walls. The silence was deep, like the mountain itself was listening. At the end of the hall, a figure sat cross-legged on a raised platform. His skin was pale blue, his hair pure white. He wore no armor, only a cloak of layered cloth and a single mark. Over his brow a scar shaped like a flame. Tashara knelt before him. Master Enro, she said. Velkara calls you once again. The Draxen have returned. My father's blade has been passed, and the human who holds it has proven himself. The monk opened his eyes. They glowed with quiet fire. He looked at Lorne, long and deep. Then he stood slowly, with a grace that defied age. I knew this day would come, he said. I felt the sword awaken. The blood of Kareth stirs once more, and the fire of a new warrior rises with it. He stepped forward and placed a hand on Lorne's shoulder. You carry more than steel, human. You carry the voice of Velkara's past. But more than that, you carry its future. Lorne didn't know what to say. He only bowed his head in silence. Enro turned to Tashara. Prepare the circle. The trial must begin before the sun falls. If he is truly worthy, the blade will show us. Tashara looked at Lorne, her face unreadable. Then she nodded and led him deeper into the mountain. The real test was yet to come. Asterisk. The trial chamber was carved into the mountain's heart. Its walls glowed with deep red crystals, and the floor was smooth black stone. In the center stood a circular platform surrounded by carved runes. The air was warm and heavy. Silent figures stood around the edges, their eyes fixed on Lorne. Tashara handed Lorne the sword. Her fingers lingered on the hilt before she let go. This trial was created by the first blade master. It will test your strength, your will, and your purpose. If the sword accepts you, the path ahead will open. If not, the mountain will close forever. Lorne nodded once. He stepped into the circle and felt the energy shift. A hum rose from the floor, and the crystals on the walls began to pulse with light. The sword grew warm in his hand. The trial had begun. Flashes of light burst around him. Suddenly, he stood in a different place. Not the chamber. Not the mountain, but a battlefield. The sky was dark. Fires burned across broken ground. Bodies lay scattered. The Draxen stood across from him in endless numbers. He took a step forward, and they charged. Lorne raised the sword and struck. The air screamed with each swing, but for every enemy he cut down, another rose. The weight grew heavier. His arms ached. His legs slowed. The battlefield never ended. He fought through fear, through pain, through doubt. The sword burned in his grip, pushing him harder. Then a figure appeared in the smoke. A tall man with the same eyes as Tashara. His armor bore the mark of Kareth. He raised a blade and stepped forward. "You hold my sword," the figure sighed. "But do you carry my spirit?" Lorne said nothing. He gripped the hilt tighter and charged. The blades met with a clash that shook the ground. The man fought with unmatched skill. Every move tested Lorne's limits. His heart pounded. His mind screamed, but he did not fall. They fought through fire, through wind, through silence. At last the ghost warrior stepped back and lowered his blade. "You have my strength, but that is not enough. What do you fight for?" Lorne dropped to one knee. "Not for glory, not for power. I fight so others won't have to. I fight to protect, to stop the suffering." The figure smiled. "Then rise and carry the blade with honor." The battlefield faded. The smoke vanished. Lorne stood again in the mountain chamber. The sword glowed white in his hand. The runes beneath his feet blazed with light. Around him, the watchers lowered their heads in respect. Enro stepped forward. "The blade accepts you. Velkara accepts you. The bond is sealed." Tashara approached and stood before Lorne. Her eyes shimmered, not with sadness, but with pride. "You've done more than prove yourself. You've honored my father. And me." She reached for his hand and placed a small crystal inside it. "This holds the coordinates to the Draxen command vessel. If we strike now, we end it. Not just for Velkara, but for every world they threaten." Lorne nodded and turned to Enro. "Will you help us?" The monk raised his hand. "The time of silence is over. The mountain will fight." By morning, they had gathered a force. Monks, survivors, hunters, warriors once thought broken. They rose again, united under a single cause. Lorne led them, the sword of Kareth at his side. They traveled by shuttle through asteroid fields and shadow clouds. At the edge of the Valkyren system, they found the Draxen flagship, dark, massive, waiting. The battle was fierce. Explosions tore through space. Fighters danced between fire and steel. Lorne boarded the enemy ship with a strike team. At the core chamber, he faced the final Draxen warlord. The duel was brutal. Blades clashed, sparks flew, but Lorne fought not alone. Behind him stood Tashara, and in his hand, the blade that once led a world. Together, they ended the last threat. When it was over, the stars looked brighter. The silence that followed was not of fear, but peace. Back on Velkara, the people gathered to honor the fallen and the living. Tashara stood beside Lorne as the elders spoke of unity, courage, and hope. The sword was placed in a crystal chamber, not as a weapon, but as a symbol. Tashara looked at Lorne and smiled. "My father's sword chose well." Lorne looked at the horizon, where the mountains met the sky. His mission had changed. His path had changed. But one thing was clear: he was home.